Expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And hello, K-Man, and welcome to your special Good Friday edition of Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon, and of course, yes, who exactly would be broadcasting on Good Friday other than Straight Talk?
Only us, that's right.
Oh, and do we have a treat for them, right?
Always faithful and always excited to be here. Good evening to you, Ellio. How are you this fabulously wonderful Good Friday?
Well, you might be able to tell that I got some rest, you see. How perky I am.
Yes.
I'm alive and well.
That's wonderful. You got up at 2 o'clock a.m. yesterday, and I hope you went to bed really early last night. It seems like you have. That's good.
Don't get into my business, Austin.
Well, you kind of shared it with the listening audience yesterday. If you would.
No, I'm teasing you, because you said you hope I went to bed early last night. I said, don't get in my business.
I just thought you were sleepy and needed the rest. It was an honest, harmless comment.
Yeah, I know. So there's some of these people that are guilty, you know.
Oh yes.
Yeah, no,
that guilty conscience automatically get defensive.
That's what it is, yeah. Killing him. No, it was good. I went to bed early, and then I went to East End first thing this morning as well. Got a little something done, and then came home and took a nap.
Okay.
And here I am.
There you are. Fantastic. Well, happy Friday. Today is Friday. It is a public holiday, so no traffic to contend with on the roads. Mm-hmm. Those of you hopefully have already found your campsite and are certainly settling in, if not getting ready to prepare dinner for the evening. I hope the mosquitoes aren't so bad. It is a bit windy outside, which is nice, and hopefully the wind is strong enough to keep those pesky little mosquitoes at bay. Mm-hmm. But if that doesn't work, a good old campfire always seems to do the trick, or so I'm told. Mm-hmm. We were scheduled to have a visit from the Georgetown North candidate, Miss Romelia Welcome in studios, but we had a bit of a scheduling snafu, and Miss Welcome will be our guest, not this Friday, obviously, but next Friday here on Straight Talk, and I believe that'll be from 5 to 5:30. So we'll, of course, give our listeners a wide degree of notice of that program, but no guest in studios today. Instead, I thought we might, well, in the first instance, do a little praise and worship, as the case may be. It is Good Friday, an opportunity for us to pay homage to the Almighty and remember what today really is. For your permission, maybe do that in the place of our good news, as we normally do in the first half hour.
I think it's a great idea.
And then afterwards, I guess maybe I'm doing a little prayer before some will say, "You sinner." I want to engage that topic on the I think it's the second question or the third question on the referendum. I don't remember the order. But the question on decriminalizing small amounts of cannabis, should this happen? We've discussed really, I think, both the crews certainly at length, and will continue to do so. We engaged the National Lottery at least 2 times, but I think a third time just you and I. But we really haven't seemed to touch the decriminalization question. So with your permission and, of course, with your collaboration, maybe we can have a discussion on that this afternoon as well. But first things first, I think today we mark Good Friday, and that marks the beginning of Easter in the Cayman Islands. On that note, whilst there is, obviously, you're listening to us, Straight Talk, here on your radio dial at 103.1 FM today, and simulcast on YouTube, Instagram, and not one, but 2 Instagram pages.
2 Facebook pages.
Facebook pages, thank you. We are on, of course, our own Straight Talk radio show, and we are also streaming live on the ACT Cruise Tourism page. Again, it's important to reach our audiences where they are, and certainly we're happy to collaborate with ACT once again. So we're reaching a wide audience today, wherever you may be. And hopefully, even some of you may even brought a radio or your cell phone or however that works on the beach or wherever your campsite is. Because I'm sure whilst you're roughing it, I'm sure you found a Wi-Fi device to go with it. You want to rough it too much, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to be separated from that phone.
I told you somebody sent me a picture posing.
Really?
Got my radio.
Guys, excellent. Excellent. Fantastic. Well, that's at least one listener. Well, I just wanted us, before we got down to the nitty-gritty of our discussion, the seriousness of our conversation, to just pause a little bit today and reflect on the sacrifice made by our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, who gave his life out of love for all humanity so that you and I might receive forgiveness of sin. You know, the Bible tells us that sin separated us from God, and if we want to have any hope of going to heaven to be with God, then someone had to deal with sin and restore our relationship with God, that one-to-one connection that we enjoy today. Well, that someone was Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of Almighty God, and who on today's date throughout the world we celebrate, I think is the right word, but also acknowledge his crucifixion on the cross. Jesus died on the cross to get rid of the power of sin, which otherwise condemned us to an eternity in hell. His death bridged the deep gulf between God and us. It is finished, Jesus cried from the cross. Now, that doesn't mean it's over, but to the contrary, salvation, our salvation, is finished. The restoration of our friendship between God and humanity has been finished. And the task for which God's Son came to earth has been completed and finished. His death on that cross on Calvary won forgiveness for all of us. That's why today we call today Good Friday. Not because of what our Lord suffered, but instead what he was willing to suffer and to endure immeasurable pain for our sakes. We call today Good Friday because the cross is proof of the powerful love that God has for each of us. Let us therefore on this Good Friday reflect on the Word of God that provides us that assurance that the cross is not the end of the story, but instead the beginning of grace. Turning to the Word of God, Romans 5, verses 8 through 10 reads, "But God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Since we have now been justified by his blood, how much more shall we be saved from God's wrath through him? For if we were God's enemies, we were reconciled to him through the death of his Son. How much more, having been reconciled, shall we be saved through his life? 1 Peter 2, verse 24, he himself bore our sins in his body on the tree, that we might die to sin and live to righteousness. By his wounds you have been healed." And of course, a popular Isaiah 53, verse 5, "But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and by his stripes we are healed." Wherever you are today within the sound of my voice, I ask that you join with my colleague and I, if only for a moment, as we recognize and celebrate and pay tribute to the day that we now honor by bowing your head as we say a short and quick prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we remember today the pain and suffering of the cross and all that your blessed and only Son, Jesus, was willing to endure so that we could be set free. He paid the price, such a sacrifice, to offer us the gift of eternal life. Help us to never take for granted this huge gift of love on our behalf. Help us to be reminded of the cost of it all. Forgive us for being too busy or distracted by other things, for not fully recognizing what you freely gave and what you continue to do for us. Thank you, Lord, that by your wounds we are healed today. Thank you that because of your huge sacrifice, we can live free today. Thank you that sin and death have been conquered and that your power is everlasting. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So, yes, just wanted to...
Very good.
Thank you.
I will stress that as I heard you reading that and saying the prayer, I thought, what a fitting tribute this afternoon, because that is the ultimate good news, Austin.
It is the ultimate.
We normally have between 4:30 and 5 o'clock good news, and I'm sitting here saying, I think that's the top good news.
I would have to agree with you. I'm glad you supported it, and I thank you obviously for allowing us the time to say so, because I know. Well, put it this way: without telling people your business, I know your heart. I know you, and I know you believe in these things as I do. And obviously, as business partners, we have on more occasions than one, obviously, bowed our own head and lifted our hearts to the heavens, so to speak. So on Good Friday, to the Caymanians, I say we were all raised very much the same way.
That's it.
Whilst we may not know each other personally, whilst we may have grew up in different districts and different homes, the one thing all Caymanians share in common is the fundamental way we were all raised in our homes.
That's right.
And whether you're a Christian today or whether you've, as they say, backslid a little bit, the good news is God is always waiting on you. All you got to do is come back home.
That's it. A perfect God to deal with all our imperfections.
Absolutely. And there are many, many imperfections, but he loves us still. We draw breath still. We still live, in my opinion, in the most beautiful part of God's green planet. We are fortunate to live here. We're fortunate to be able to, obviously air and debate our differences with or without the government, with or without each other, and do so in all freedom without fear of persecution. That is a gift. There are a lot of places in this world where that just simply
can't happen.
I think of, so many to think of. I think of the horror between the Israeli-Gaza battle, what's going on in Ukraine and Russia, the lives that are lost, and the millions of people, innocent people, families, children, just like you and me, who have nothing to do with the war, but they're being obviously collateral damage. And here we are in the Cayman Islands arguing over whether we should have necessary infrastructure or not. Whether we should enjoy a day at the beach or go camping, whether we should have the opportunity to go to vote or shouldn't vote. Really, we take a lot of things for granted, but as a country, we are extremely, extremely blessed. And it's important that every now and again, we pause and reflect on that reality, And again, I guess in closing, bringing us together was more than mere coincidence.
Absolutely.
And, I thank God for it every day. I really do.
No, I appreciate that. And, I definitely again say that I don't think I can speak on behalf of anyone. Definitely not for God himself, but I'm pretty sure. I feel pretty confident he's appreciative of what we just done today.
I hope so.
A little bit of light.
I hope so.
In this world is always appreciated. So it's been good.
Yeah.
And so on to other great news and discussions, my friend.
Yeah.
I think we're off to a good start.
I think we are.
I know we've been having a lot of discussions in terms of the referendum, and we had a good chat about cruise again yesterday.
It was a good discussion on cruise yesterday, and we're going to continue that next week, and arguably as the days draw closer to Election Day.
Only 12 days to go, I've been told.
There you go. The clock is ticking. Well, we're sure going to do our part. I think just for what it's worth, I mean, I know they're going to slap the hand away, but, we continue to extend a carrot stick, an olive branch to all sides in this cruise debate. And we would love to have you sit at the table and discuss it in open dialogue. It's useful to have, the pros and the cons sitting at the same table, agreeing to respectfully, professionally debate those issues. And again, we have the forum, we have the room, we got the mics, we got the cameras. I'll make it available. We'll make it available. So if you want to be a part of that with the purpose of educating the public even further, then please reach back and we'll make that time happen. Yeah. In the meantime, of course, obviously we will continue to have our discussions with our candidates as part of our ongoing election forums. And that, too, will serve to, we hope, help the voters make a decision on Election Day.
All right. So talking about referendum, you were on TV.
I was. I had the opportunity. That was nice.
So I'm sure you didn't have that much time on that particular discussion, but you got a little bit more time here.
I do.
Let's see if we can chat about that. Tell us what you were discussing.
Yes.
I think I'm going to interview you today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Harris, welcome here in the studio. It's a pleasure to have you this afternoon. How are you?
I'm fantastic, Ellio. Thank you for inviting me. A happy Good Friday to you and your family.
Great. So we've all been very excited that the Compass has started back up. Not that's it, the Compass, but the dark group, the Compass, has started back up, came in 27. We talked about how great that is for the country and how welcome it is. And it's good to see that you were actually featured on it. I haven't actually had the chance to see it. I just saw a couple of the snippets.
Right.
But I understood that you were chatting with, along with Mario.
Yes.
Mario Ebanks, just for clarity.
Yeah.
Mario Ebanks on the issue, on the referendum issues.
Yes.
And I know that we had him here in the studio as well, and we heard what his position was. And I think it was definitely 2 strikes against the marijuana, one against marijuana, one against gambling. And it sounded like a half X, if not a full X, for cruise tourism as well. So I think he's
sort of a yes with conditions, but he wasn't sure on the whole cruise thing yet. Well, he did, how should we say, expand on his views on that third question when he was. Yeah. Again, he was our guest on Monday this week. And when we chatted with him on Monday, he was on the fence. It was yes with conditions. Just 3 days later on a Thursday, which was last night when I had the interview with Miss Tammy Suleiman, and it's now called Compass TV. But they certainly have taken the old staff. A lot of the same familiar Caymanian faces from Cayman 27 are there, including, of course, our good friend Reshma. The Resh Hour. So really, DART did a fantastic job. I mean, let's just face it. They've got a camera in the room that it is the only camera of its type south of the U.S. border anywhere in the world. So obviously it's made in China, but it is such a technological just advancement in that studio. One of their cameras, we have one of them, the only one, outside of the United States, anywhere in the world. They really have done a nice job setting up a number of studios. It's a really professional television outfit now. And listen, I thought it was great. But yes, I was chatting there about the 3 referendum questions, and I was pitted, if you will, or slotted with our good friend Mario Ebanks, who gave basically a hard no to all 3 questions. He went on to suggest that they should all be.
So he's no longer on the fence on cruise.
He's not on the fence on the cruise side. He feels that the question is improperly worded. He feels that the information shared by what is a government-led referendum has been insufficient to answer the question. And rather surprisingly, he suggested that all 3 questions really were out of time and out of place. We had other priorities, and they should all be destined for the trash heap, I think, to paraphrase his words. But he was a gentleman about it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he was always very eloquent and very well spoken, and he was a treat to sit next to, albeit we shared largely different views.
Hearing you say that just reminds me of a bit of an intellectual discussion I was listening to on YouTube some weeks ago, where the guy compliments the other. I love your book. It's a wonderful book. The only problem with it is it's all wrong.
It's all wrong. All your conclusions are daft.
But I love the book.
It's very well written.
So it sounds like what you're saying about Mario right now.
It was a living, breathing example of how we always say we can disagree without being disagreeable. Yeah. And Tammy Suleiman, as always, was a fantastic host and moderator. It was a good discussion. But to your point, in a 50-minute window, it really didn't give much opportunity to expand in great detail on these questions. But I am encouraged that she, as another media house, took on these 3 questions and, has started the public education or continues the public education on these 3 referendum questions, because it's really easy to have these questions get lost in the minutia of election campaigning and the focusing on the candidates and, the various points and whatnot. It's real easy to forget that when you go to the polls, not only will you cast an X for who you want to be your next leader, but you'll also be asked to answer 3 referendum questions. And in case you forgot what they are, here they are again. So I thought that was very encouraging. I thought she did a great job, and I just want to send a shout out to Tammy and the whole Compass TV team for what was a very enjoyable opportunity, and to highly recommend to you, if you ever get the phone call, to jump on it, because I know you'd love it.
I'll keep that in mind.
I know you'd love it.
So I want
to encourage them to get you and I both on at the same time.
Oh, they're probably trying to avoid that often.
I'm probably sure
they're lightning in a bottle.
They probably would.
So I know that there have not been a lot of discussion on the other topics. So maybe we can discuss. I want to open up to you really, but
yeah.
Let's discuss primarily the other 2 topics, the marijuana and the gambling, because there hasn't been a lot of discussion about that. And I think the public equally needs to be educated on those 2 topics.
Yes.
So that they can make a decision.
No, I agree 100%. 100%.
Yeah. And I know that you and I had a little spate of a discussion on 1 or 2 of them, but not enough. So go ahead, lead us off. What are some of your thoughts?
Sure. Well, thank you, Ellio. And with 5 minutes and 30 seconds before we have to pause and go to the BBC News, it just gives us an opportunity, I think, to set the table.
A little prelude.
So before we get to the question of decriminalization and, small amounts, should that happen in Cayman, one of the things that we have to help us in our decision-making is that the liberalization of cannabis is a global phenomenon. It's not just happening in Cayman, it's happening worldwide. It started in the U.S., spread to Canada. There are places in Europe, Amsterdam and whatnot, have entire cities. And of course, they've taken it a step further from decriminalizing to legalizing to monetizing. And in some parts of the world, it's frankly a cash cow. We're not there yet. We're taking that first potential step across the precipice. And I think we need only look to our neighbors in the region. In 2015, Jamaica's Dangerous Drugs Amendment Act was made into legislation. And in that act, it chose the word depenalized. We're using the word decriminalized. But according to Jamaica's Dangerous Drugs Amendment Act 2015, they depenalized the personal use of small quantities of cannabis, and their law defined it as 2 ounces or less, which no longer subjects persons to arrest, detention, or prosecution in court, or does it attract a criminal record. Personal use is instead punishable by the issuing of a police ticket and a fine in the amount of Jamaican $500, which can either be paid online or at a debt collection outlet. In addition,
sorry, give me that piece again. What is it about the fine? What fine?
The fine is Jamaican $500 if you're found with amounts exceeding 2 ounces, which is, again, just a fine. You don't go to court. You don't get a mark on your criminal record. And you can simply pay that fine either by online transfer or at any of Jamaica's various tax collection outlets. So it's like paying a driver's licensing fee, but it's definitely lower ranked as a misdemeanor. It also includes the legal right for Jamaicans to cultivate up to 5 ganja plants, as they refer to it in their country, for personal therapeutic use. So if we're looking for examples as to how has this worked in other jurisdictions, we don't have to go far, but to look at what has happened in Jamaica. Now, a lot of people say, okay, so they've done it. What has been the benefits? What will our benefits be potentially? Again, I use Jamaica as an example. According to remarks shared by the former Minister of Justice, Mark Golding, who was Minister of Justice between 2012 and 2016, he said this: depenalization is already having a beneficial effect on the justice system, as evidenced by data from the Corporate Area Resident Magistrates Court, which shows a significant reduction in the court caseload. In 2014, cannabis cases were approximately 25% of all criminal cases. Since the depenalization, which occurred in 2015, cases involving possession or smoking of cannabis coming into the court have been reduced by over 90%. So some 3,000 plus cases have been removed from the docket, thereby allowing the court to focus its limited time and resources on more serious offenses, larceny, fraud, murder, rape, etc., but certainly freeing up the court's resources. It goes on to add that in the 14 months at the time of his comments, over 3,954 Jamaicans benefited from the passage of the Dangerous Drugs Amendment Act by simply removing the criminal component of cannabis to persons and individuals and the removal of criminal records. The reform also created various economic opportunities through the emergence of a new medical cannabis industry. But Jamaica, unlike, say, for example, the U.S. and Canada and Europe, are struggling to realize the economic benefits through a number of challenges, not least of which the banking sector still refuses access and refuses to acknowledge the marijuana industry as a potential financial sector industry. So if you have a business, you can't open bank accounts. If you are, in fact, paying and receiving contracts, you can't do any of that through the bank. So the whole monetization of medical marijuana in Jamaica has been met with some difficulties. But we can see directly where a country very close to us, how it has benefited from the decriminalization process. At 59 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock, we have to pause, but keep it locked. We'll be right back.
Bobo.
BBC News.
BBC News.
World news from the BBC. Violent clashes.
Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive win.
A search and recovery
A
operation.
race against time.
An imminent threat.
Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. The BBC is the world's most trusted news source. And Bobo 103.1 is where you'll find the BBC World Service.
BBC News. The world news from the BBC.
And the home of Cayman's most listened to talk shows.
That's right, folks. Everyone is telling their mama about the cold hard truth.
And welcome to Straight Talk. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon.
Across Cayman, on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here.
More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority. At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands. Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
Hello, this is the BBC News with Fiona MacDonald. Donald Trump has said his administration will abandon efforts to broker a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine unless there are rapid signs of progress. The US says it presented a plan to both countries on Thursday. Our Europe regional editor Paul Moss reports.
First, it was Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Now Donald Trump has echoed his stark threat. If either Russia or Ukraine makes it difficult to get a peace deal, they will quit the process, telling them, the US president said, "You're foolish, you're fools, you're horrible people." We don't know what the peace deal is, which the White House has apparently proposed to both Russia and Ukraine. Kiev has always feared that President Trump will demand it hands over a sizable chunk of territory to Russia. What we do know is that the president wants a response, and soon.
The former president of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Joseph Kabila, has returned to the country, arriving in the rebel-controlled eastern city of Goma. Reports say Mr. Kabila, who's been based in Zimbabwe and South Africa since last year, passed through Rwanda's capital, Kigali. His presence is likely to raise tensions with the current president, Felix Tshisekedi. Large crowds have protested in Tunisia outside the trial of more than 40 senior politicians, diplomats and media personalities accused of conspiring against the state and President Kais Saied. Here's our Middle East regional editor, Mike Thompson.
Rights groups claim that this trial is more about a crackdown on dissent by an increasingly authoritarian president than a quest for justice. Those on trial include the prominent opposition leader Najib Shabi and dozens of other renowned politicians, media figures and former officials. They're accused of various conspiracy charges. All potentially face long jail terms or even the death penalty. Although capital punishment has effectively been suspended in Tunisia, the sentence remains available to judges.
Thousands of people have gathered in the Yemeni capital Sana'a to protest about a deadly US strike that's reported to have killed at least 80 people. In retaliation for the attack on the Red Sea port, the Houthis said they'd fired missiles at 2 US aircraft carriers and an Israeli military site. This man was injured in the airstrike on Sana'a. He described how he tried to escape the explosions.
We all ran. Strike after strike, one after the other. One after the other, the world turned to fire. We got out, and every time they struck, we looked for cover, tried to take shelter. We left when we saw the checkpoint outside, and the place we were in at the beginning had been hit too, so no one could leave.
The US military said that its strike was meant to restrict supplies and funds for the Iranian-backed group. World News from the BBC. The United States military is halving the number of troops deployed in Syria to below 1,000. A Pentagon spokesman said the reduction reflected success in combating Islamic State militants. Video posted on social media suggests a partial withdrawal has already begun. A US senator has given more details about his meetings with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, an immigrant who was wrongly deported last month to a jail in El Salvador. Senator Chris Van Hollen, a Democrat, said Mr. Abrego Garcia appeared to be okay. At a news conference, he said the case was not just about the rights of one man.
This case is about protecting fundamental freedoms and the fundamental principle in the Constitution for due process that protects everybody who resides in America. This is an issue for every American who cares about our Constitution, who cares about personal liberty, who cares about due process, and who cares about what makes America so different, which is adherence to all of those things.
The Trump administration has repeatedly insisted that Mr. Abrego Garcia is a gang member and will not be allowed to return, despite numerous court rulings. Officials in the west of the Democratic Republic of Congo say the number of people now known to have died in a riverboat accident several days ago is 148. Previously, 50 had been confirmed dead. The wooden motorboat caught fire and capsized on the Congo River near Mbandaka. The vessel was carrying about 400 passengers. Pakistan's Interior Minister has condemned a series of violent protests against the fast food chain KFC in cities across the country. Activists opposed to the war in Gaza have been urging a boycott of the chain, calling it a symbol of the United States and its ally Israel. Talal Chowdhury said most KFC outlets in Pakistan were locally operated.
Views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, man, to more Straight Talk, brought to you live on Bobo 103.1 FM on this otherwise public holiday of Good Friday with your host, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris. The phone lines, as the nice lady said, are open. 745-2626 is the number. Or you can take advantage of our version of the toll-free number by dialing our WhatsApp number, 928-2562. And from there, either sharing a WhatsApp audio note or a WhatsApp traditional text message. And we will share your thoughts, questions, and viewpoints live on the air. We are tackling at 7 minutes now past the hour of 5 o'clock the question on decriminalization of small amounts of cannabis in the Cayman Islands. And I was sharing just a few of my thoughts and considerations, and my colleague was being kind enough to interview me in that process. What a unique perspective that is.
Yeah, so I want to continue that. So just to touch on a couple of things that you said. One, you mentioned that in Jamaica they call it depenalized, which I think is an appropriate name as well, because these substances would have fallen under the penal code.
Yes.
Even here in Cayman, under
That's
the penal code. So to depenalize it is, I think, a very appropriate term. The other thing that you mentioned was persons actually, because one of the concerns that you'll have people raising here is, okay, so you're talking about decriminalizing or depenalizing it, and so we're exactly going to buy it. So you're criminalizing it. It's still a criminal offense to supply it, but yet at the same time you smoke it. Where are they going to go? We're going to get it. And you mentioned something about being able to grow a certain amount of their plants. So it sounds like you can actually be growing your own supply.
Well, I said that in the context of the example of Jamaica, but I want to be crystal clear. The question that'll appear on the ballot paper doesn't discuss any of that. The question simply states, do you support the decriminalization of the consumption and possession of small amounts of cannabis, which, in my view, the public is being asked to answer two sets of questions in one. Number one, defining what are small amounts of cannabis, and do you support its decriminalization? But that's it. Now,
but according to the Jamaica thing that you read,
yes.
It's 2 ounces.
Yes, exactly. Small amounts are defined in Jamaica as 2 ounces or less.
Okay.
So maybe Cayman could follow suit. Maybe they could go smaller, but that is an example.
Absolutely. And I will take this opportunity again to remind them, just like we talk about cruise, it doesn't mean it's going to be 2 ounces, whatever. Those are discussions that would take place afterwards.
Yes. If it is a successful yes vote, then the government will have the freedom to at least pursue.
Work in that direction.
Work in that direction.
And
exactly.
part of what they would be coming to the public with, by putting together a group, as we heard Mr. Bryan talking about, putting together a group with medical persons, lay persons, etc., that would be, amongst other things, defining what that small amount here.
Yes.
In Cayman, it might be 1 ounce.
Yes, exactly.
Instead of 2.
Yes.
And
we
so
can expect a thorough public consultation period on all three of the questions if we get a yes on them all.
Absolutely. And I think that's a positive thing in terms of just being able to have a discussion. I think it's important, regardless of what question it is, to understand a yes allows a discussion.
Yeah.
And no does not.
Right.
And no says, I don't want to talk about it.
That's right.
Just drop it. So on this particular thing, and I know that this is not in the question, but it's just, again, to gain greater clarity on what's happening in Jamaica from your research. And in addition, that can allow persons to say where my mind goes, because persons do say, yeah, but if you do decriminalize it, but it's criminal if you supply it.
Yes.
In Jamaica context, what you're saying is that a person is allowed to grow a certain amount of plants.
Right. But again, under the premise that whether it be growing plants, in Jamaica's case, they can grow up to 5 plants. In other places in the Caribbean, it's up to 3 plants.
Right.
But regardless of that number, you are using, obviously, allowable to grow plants for your own personal consumption.
Right.
Now, that's interesting because I think there's the rub. If you're going to limit small amounts of cannabis to 2 ounces or less, then clearly you are going to be able to produce more than 2 ounces if you're allowed to grow 3 plants.
Right.
So I don't know. I haven't read enough into the Dangerous Drugs Act amendment in Jamaica to see how they reconcile those 2 points. But at the end of the day, these are the restrictions that have been lifted and the other benefits that have accrued from their decision in 2015.
And that's where we get the discussion, because there's going to be other things that we need to go and research, and we're just starting this discussion.
Yeah.
So in relation to the marijuana, the other thing is that many persons are going to take the position to say, I'm not sure that this is necessarily healthy. One of the things you mentioned was the court issue.
Yes.
That they've seen a reduction on the persons that are actually going to court. I think you said it got it down to 3,900.
Yeah, they've seen a reduction in the overall court caseload by 90%. And why is that important? Here in the Cayman Islands context, the courts from the Chief Justice, every time the opening of Grand Court, they have been petitioning various government administrations for a new courthouse.
Right.
They're saying the court space that is available is limited based on the demand of cases moving through the courts.
Right.
The lockup facilities are no longer suitable for the types of criminals, some in many cases violent offenders, that they're now seeing before the courts. But overall, the demand has weighed more heavily than the infrastructure can handle.
So to put life and flesh to what you're saying, or additional flesh, because you've definitely fleshed it, but what you're saying is, and again, just throwing out numbers, we talked about a possible new court. Let's say that was going to cost you another 10, 15, 20 million.
Yeah, in Cayman, 50, 60, 75 million.
That you were, yeah, right. Yeah. And if you were to somehow, you were saying, reduce the amount of person, the traffic in the court, in this particular case, it might be large to things like marijuana.
Yes.
You might be avoiding the spend.
Well, at the very least, you are increasing the shelf life of the existing court until such time that government can either afford or decide to build a new courthouse. Because again, the courts have been on this for at least 8 years and no new courthouse has been built.
Yeah.
You know, so oftentimes the wants and the needs, you know, don't coexist. And certainly in terms of when these projects are started, we use the mental health facility as a prime example.
Yeah.
You know, the need was clearly defined, but it took us forever and a day to make it happen.
I think it's a fair enough argument, very valid points. So, and I would imagine, again, from a social perspective, you are to have a tobacco law or whatever, smoking. I don't know exactly what the verbiage was, where, again, in terms of sale, and they also talk about where you can smoke.
Yes.
I would imagine the same rules would most likely apply. Again, we don't have the answers to this, but I would like just to hear your opinion on it.
Yes. Yes. Well, again, so we see what Jamaica has done, and that is just an example of where we could take it, or what could be some of the what happens next if there is a yes vote and if we move in this direction. Again, you don't have to use Jamaica. There are a myriad of options you can go around the globe, because as I said before, the liberalization of cannabis, marijuana is in fact a global phenomenon. And a lot of it has to do with, again, you know, the cost associated to fighting this war on drugs. What is the best use of time? You know, and again, I don't have the scientific evidence here, but you don't have people smoking marijuana and then going off and speeding in their car. You don't have people smoking marijuana necessarily going out and committing violent offenses. You don't have people overdosing on marijuana and dying like you do on cocaine and fentanyl and other things. So this whole war on drugs, it's all a matter of resources. You can't have all the resources to fight all of the battles on all of the fronts. Again, just last week, we increased the police budget by $14 million. You know, that's an example. There's a budget line item that is only going to increase year on year on year. We know that. The question is, how do we make the resources that are provided to our security forces useful, meaningful, and how do we get best value for money? One of those is perhaps to remove what is being considered worldwide as a lesser drug as compared to some of the more serious threats, the pharmaceuticals that are out there that are actually killing people. And again, whether you agree with that, you know, notion or agree with those evidence, well, that evidence, I mean, it is a fact.
Yeah.
You know, you can look it up.
And I can definitely see, I mean, it's obvious in your face how you would see the reduction in terms of court cases, et cetera, and potentially where you're saving money in relation to the courts. I think the arguments that come out there would be, well, hold on a second. Are we going to do that with everything? If it's illegal, we want to keep it out of court. Well, let's just legalize it. So I think we need to address that issue in our discussion.
Yes.
You know, is it a case that we're simply legalizing something now and therefore we're reducing the cases? And I also noted, I think it was Donald Trump mentioned that one of the things he wanted was a big education program in all the schools and showing all the harmful effects of various drugs. He talked about some of the more serious ones, I think, like fentanyl, et cetera. But speak to those things. I mean, one, the education process, and also, you know, is it simply a matter of this is ridiculous because all we're really doing is saying, you know, let's legalize the crime so we don't have to deal with it because it's no longer a crime?
Well, you've used that word a couple of times, and you're not the only one. And I think that's the first point to make. The decriminalizing of marijuana or cannabis does not mean the legalizing of it. The drug itself will still remain illegal, but what it will be or could be if there is a yes vote that says a person caught in possession and or personal consumption of certain amounts may be allowable for recreational use, and it will change its category. It's still an illegal drug, still an illegal substance, but it will move it from a criminal record, which remains on your permanent record, to that of a misdemeanor, never appearing on your criminal record, never having to go to court, just simply paying a fine. If you are in contravention of having, again, if we choose or if we decide after the yes vote that 2 ounces is the small amount and we're caught with 3 ounces, well, there are implications. There are consequences. It may be more than a fine. It may be jail time. You may have to go before a justice. And then the question of, to what extent does it go on a criminal record? Certainly, I think the question is, number one, personal consumption. Number two, decriminalizing, not legalizing. And that is where we have to draw a very clear, distinct line. So this notion that, if we say yes and the government proceeds on this, then we're going to have basically encourage young people and everybody to be smoking pot on every street corner. No, that is completely false.
I want to touch on that a little bit. And I just want to, before doing that, I want to preface the statement by saying, back in the day, from the beginning of time, if you like, we had the campfire discussions, right?
Yes.
The campfire discussion was where we all gathered around the campfire to discuss the events, decisions were made, people socialized. You found out what the guy that finally made it over the mountain.
Right.
You found out what he saw around the campfire.
That's right.
I see this shows like this as a part of that campfire.
I agree.
And so this is where you and I and other persons, the listening audience, by text, by calls, et cetera, can engage in this discussion. And I'm pretty sure not just informative for ourselves, but in legislators.
Yes.
Being able to get a pulse of what the persons or the public is thinking.
That's right.
So, for example, I could say, well, if I saw it that it was decriminalized or even legalized, at some point, for example, I talked about, well, where could you smoke it?
Right.
Maybe the persons might say, yeah, I think you should only be able to smoke that one in home, in private, and not the kind of typical 10 feet outside the club.
Right.
Those sort of discussions.
Yes. And again, those are questions that if there is in fact a yes,
we can
have and start pursuing and then seeking to define it. That is what I think is so very important to, impress upon the public who will be going to the polls. Don't get ahead of yourself. I mean, I said the same thing on Cruz when the question was asked with Tammy, albeit we spent very little time on Cruz, but I made the point that the only thing we're creating more work for ourselves in this ongoing discussion, certainly on Cruz and the whole CPR, ACT thing and the whole battle that's raging is all unnecessary. Because if it's a yes, then all of these conversations that we're having today
can take place.
Start again.
Yeah.
But this time, they will be supported with the government giving you, well, here's the plan. This is how many peers we want. We want 1, we want 2. This is going to be the location of it. This is who's going to pay for it. This is the threats that we know potentially could happen to the environment. And these are how we're going to suggest we mitigate against it. And then that public discussion will begin anew. So we're wanting to have this discussion now, but the reality is we could have it much more meaningful if there is, in fact, a yes vote at the other end of the table.
No, absolutely. And I would say that, you have the mechanisms, and the public should understand that you have the mechanisms to stop things.
Yes.
What you don't always have the mechanism to do is to get things started.
That is so correct.
So let's look at people-initiated referendum. If for some reason you voted yes, for example, on decriminalization or depenalization of marijuana, at any point in time, the public could say, I don't like where this is going.
Right.
And then you have another PIR, and we stop it. The brakes go on.
That's right.
But what you can't necessarily do is to initiate that or reinitiate and get it going.
That's
and
right.
This is where I think I know on a lot of things it can be arguably very destructive as well.
I completely agree. These issues, with maybe the exception of decriminalizing, I guess because, of the nature of the conversation, decriminalizing of marijuana is kind of a hot topic like same-sex marriage. And most politicians stay away from those difficult subjects because frankly, it may cost them their election. But I say leadership is more than, re-election. Right. The oath we took when we took office is to protect and defend the interests of the people of the Cayman Islands, not to worry about the next 4 years.
Not your seat.
And not your seat. That's the bottom line.
I swear to look out for my seat.
Yeah, it doesn't say that anywhere in the oath that we took before God and man. So I just want to point that out.
So go ahead. You're out of time or something?
No, we got 6 minutes left. Outside of the moral implications on the decriminalization question, or what someone may argue as it being contrary to the principles of the people of the Cayman Islands as set out in the preamble of our Constitution, that we're a God-fearing nation, et cetera, I won't discuss the moral and religious aspect. I think I'm not an authority to talk on that topic from that standpoint. Yeah, I read the Bible and do my devotions, but, someone like a Pastor House and someone like a Reverend Sykes, someone like, someone else, more...
I'll fill in there, Austin.
Well, you can do as well because your mother raised you right, but certainly someone better than me. But I believe there are two aspects to this question that nobody is giving any consideration of. They're thinking just of, oh, my God, you're taking a crime and making it illegal.
Right.
Oh, my God,
making it illegal,
you're sending the wrong message that our kids should now start smoking marijuana. Well, first of all, newsflash, alcohol is and always has been legal in this country, and we have more evidence or a fact of alcohol, and in particular the abuse of alcohol, doing damage to our young people and not so young people. And no one is suggesting stiffer penalties. No one is suggesting stiffer, fines or whatever. No one's talking about it. But somehow or the other, marijuana is the end of the world. But that's what they're focusing on. There are other aspects of this question that I think supersede or go beyond that otherwise surface-level conversation, and there are two of them. My colleague in the discussion with Tammy Suleiman pulled out the Cayman Islands Constitution and started quoting from it, and I was glad he did, because also contained in the Constitution is something called the Bill of Rights. And in the Bill of Rights, there is a fundamental human right called the freedom of movement.
Right.
And that freedom of movement says a person should not be allowed from traveling from place to place. In the current environment where marijuana and possession and consumption can land you a criminal offense and imprisonment and a fine, and of course staying on your record for years, will also have implications on a person's ability to get travel documentation. You can't get a passport, you can't get a waiver, you can't get a visa, you can't get an ESTA if you answer the question, have you ever had a criminal conviction? Now, yes, you will say there are some exceptions to the rule, but in large part, whether a person smoked a spliff when they were 15 or they did so in their late 20s and they were caught with it, they have that on their personal record and they have travel restrictions attached to it. Now, some will say, well, that's fair. You broke the law. There should be penalties. But I ask you, if that person, let's just assume worst case scenario, but it happens every day, that person has a life-threatening medical condition that cannot be cured or even treated in the Cayman Islands, but they can't leave the island because of this restriction. What are we saying? Their life, because they smoked a spliff and got caught with it, is now revoked, and I'm sorry, you shouldn't have committed the crime. Now you pay for it, ultimately, with your life. The inclusion of marijuana as a criminal offense with travel restrictions is, in the first instance, contrary to the International Bill of Human Rights as it relates to the freedom of movement. In the first instance, and nobody's talking about it. No one's even acknowledging it. Now, some people say, well, that's too big of an issue. Well, the other one I think is even more, with the 2 minutes that I have left, is an employment issue. In the Cayman Islands, you know as well as I do that the laws in this country, particularly the labor laws, are written in favor of the Caymanian, as it should be. But in the U.S., 39 out of 52 states, the use, personal consumption of marijuana is legal. In Canada, since 2018, the whole country is legalized the recreational use of marijuana and cannabis. So in Canada and in 39 out of the 52 states in the U.S., persons applying for work in the Cayman Islands, when answering that question on the job application, do you have a criminal offense? They can answer no, honestly, and they're fine.
Right.
the same Caymanian applying for the same position who may have that criminal conviction is now automatically at a disadvantage in comparison to his foreign counterpart, which runs contrary to, I believe, the soul and intent of our labor laws.
Yeah. Well,
and when you look at the rising number of work permits, record-breaking, 38,000 this year alone, a large percentage of those work permits, and again, I got a lot of Canadian friends, but these are persons coming from Canada, undoubtedly were placed with the same question on the same application, and arguably they got the job over the Caymanian just on that area alone. Now, we know there are other areas that where the employment labor law are ignored, or we insert words that aren't in the law that nobody pays attention to, but that is, constitutes the large number. But my question is, in an environment where we see firsthand the number of hurdles that are put before Caymanians in getting a job, shouldn't it be our objective to remove some of those hurdles instead of adding more?
Yeah. Well, I'm enjoying the discussion, and whenever we come back from the break, I want to continue on with the decriminalization and what does that mean? Does it mean it's actually going to encourage persons to smoke and those scenarios? Because I think it's a real one in many people's minds.
Yes.
And it should be addressed.
Absolutely. 28 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock is the time in studios, and we are engaging, at least in the public education conversation, on one of the three referendum questions. But your feedback and commentary is encouraged. 745-2626 is the number. Keep it locked. There'll be more Straight Talk to come here on Bobo FM.
More Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio coming up. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Bobo 103.1.
It's Earth Month, and Cayman Turtle Center is celebrating all month long. Here are 3 simple ways you can make a difference. Reduce food waste by eating leftovers. Recycle whenever you can. And support turtle conservation by attending our Earth Day turtle release on Tuesday, April 22nd at 10 a.m. We will be releasing green sea turtles from Governor's Beach. It's free and open to the public. Let's make every day Earth Day. Learn more at turtle.ky.
What's that? No sugar, same amazing taste? Coca-Cola Zero Sugar is here to stay. Classic taste, pure satisfaction. Be sure to stop into any Tortuga location and get your own case of Coke Zero. Or grab an ice-cold one straight from the cooler. Brought to you by Tortuga Distributors Limited. Coca-Cola, taste the feeling, Cayman.
Insurance matters. It gives you the confidence to live life as you should, knowing you're protected. As a leading local insurer for over 25 years, Island Heritage has a consistent track record of providing best-in-class customer service with quick and efficient claims processing. This means insurance you can rely on when you need it most. The Island Heritage Way. Visit us online at islandheritageinsurance.com today to learn more about our home, contents, motor, marine, and commercial insurance products. Go on and live your life. With Island Heritage, you can.
When it comes to weekly meal prep, I trust Kirk Market to provide the best value for quality proteins. The butchers at Kirk Market are super helpful. They always slice my steaks perfectly. Kirk Market has everything I need for healthy and flavorful protein-packed meals. From lean cuts of CAB choice beef, tender CAB prime beef, the juiciest pork, and all-natural hormone-free poultry, to their seafood section with everything from fresh local snapper to omega-3 rich salmon. I choose Kirk Market for the highest quality proteins to support my healthy lifestyle. Kirk Market. Eat well, live well, and discover a world of choice.
It's trivia every Wednesday from 7 o'clock at Sandbar on the Georgetown waterfront. Your chance to win some fantastic prizes in our free-to-enter Trivia Madness. Great offers on beer buckets, margaritas, and a delicious menu served throughout the evening. Grab your pals and get along to Sandbar every Wednesday from 7 o'clock for the most fun you can have with your clothes on. Are we ready?
Yes, Marty!
Then let's do this. Trivia, Sandbar, 7 o'clock, Wednesday. See you there.
The Office Hero. To claim this title, you have to make an exceedingly wise decision. Do something that benefits staff, impresses clients, all while keeping expenses low. Are you ready to be the Office Hero? Here's what to do. Call Hughes Cleaning Service. Hughes Cleaning Service will make your office shine and you a hero. dusting, vacuuming, windows, sanitizing, and more. Hughes expert cleaners will make your office a healthy, immaculate, impressive workspace. Call 949-0734. Visit Hughes-janitorial.com. Hughes, you get more than clean.
Across Cayman on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority, committed to caring for you. The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to Straight Talk with your two favorite hosts, Austin Harris and myself, Ellio Solomon. The number to call here up in the studio is 745-2626. Again, that number is 745-2626. And of course, if you want to send us a voice message or a text, 928-2562. That's 928-2562. And of course, we are chatting together today, my Austin Harris friend, leading the charge in relation to educating us on this whole, the other referendum question, which is about the decriminalization of marijuana.
Yes.
And I think I want to continue with that discussion, specifically helping us to understand at least, and I think we kind of have to view ourselves as a little bit of all of us, this big family of persons, including those who are listening, as engaging in this sort of consultative process, because we don't know all the answers and we're just coming up with possible solutions. But before I continue that, I think you got two texts. We'll take those first.
Yes, we have two voice notes from WhatsApp. Don't know what part of the conversation they want to jump in on, but we'll find out together.
Happy Easter to you, Austin and Ellio. Interesting topic about drugs. You see, the problem in life usually is that governments catch up very late to the reality of things. One time in the U.S. recently, we had 3 presidents in a row who were caught using drugs, but they were never prosecuted. If they had been prosecuted, their lives would have been different. What we have to do very often is to try and think of where we came from. In the Middle Ages, you could be put to death for even saying that the world was round. Alcohol was once illegal. And what we have to do is just to sit down and think about what our grandkids and great-grandkids are going to be talking about. Are they going to be saying, hey, do you know that, even at the beginning of last century, you could go to jail for possessing marijuana? No. What we have to do is get, for example, in my view, all this issue about religion. People are free if they are religious not to smoke it. But I think at a government policy level, take the religion out of it, accept the reality out there. And if people want to do drugs, in my view, they should do drugs. There is no logical reason, in my view, even cocaine and the other ones and so on, although those have got a different kind of argument. But particularly for marijuana, there is no reason why people should not be allowed to smoke. At the moment, Cayman is being forced because of these problems of some people locally thinking that marijuana is terrible, and also the legal obligations in the UK. And people are saying, what the hell is this? So how am I going to get it? Why don't you just legalize it? In Canada, they have legalized it, but nobody is walking in the street smoking pot. You hardly ever, once in a while on the street, you might hear a car passing and then there's a whiff coming out of there. Let us just be modern, look forward and try to move to tell the UK is overseas territories. We are begging you, get out of this silly international obligation to say that there is some good which is being pursued by prohibiting marijuana. If people want to smoke, let them smoke, but you can regulate it in terms of the age where they smoke and so on and so forth. By the way, even Cayman-style beef, it's got some side effects. Even turtle meat has got some side effects, but it's good. I love it, and we eat it, and it is legal.
Yes,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for those comments.
What-
and we
what-
certainly
what
do
we're
appreciate
eating?
it. We're eating salt beef and turtle, and they have some effects. I think he is referring to another kind of effect.
Well, first of all, I
Trying to
didn't
find the word.
the glutton thing.
No, well, yeah, there are parts of it, but it's some call it an aphrodisiac, like clams.
Yeah, the oysters. Yeah.
Rather not clams. Oysters
Right.
have an aphrodisiac effect, though I think that aphrodisiac effect on oysters comes in only when you combine it with tequila. But that's just me.
What would you know, right?
What would I know?
What would I know?
I just read it somewhere.
I think we had one more text before. I definitely want to chime in on what my friend just said there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So do I. But we do have another audio note. Let's hear what this listener has to add.
Good afternoon, Austin and Ellio. Well, here it is on Good Friday, and we're all at home listening to your show. I'm so pleased to hear that you're talking about the lottery, as well as this people with a minor amount of marijuana. I was interested in hearing what you said about Jamaica, Ellio, and how they had freed up the legal system by just having it as a misdemeanor and nothing on anybody's record. They would go pay it as if it's a car ticket, speeding ticket or something. Also, as far as the lottery is concerned, I have seen it in England and I have seen it elsewhere where they benefit so much from the lottery of the gains that go to education and health services, etc. It's not a money-making proposition. It's a opportunity for the people to get involved, to have a chance to win, and also the money to circulate within the community. Just wishing you all a wonderful holiday weekend, and God bless you all for being so wonderful in sharing the news everywhere of what's coming up in the elections.
All righty. Well, I do want to say
Happy Easter to you, and God bless you also.
Absolutely. I do want to say two things. One, thank both of them for engaging in the conversation, but I do want to give clarity. That was my friend who had made that comment, who is leading the charge on this particular discussion as it relates to that specific question of the decriminalization on marijuana. And again, that was Mr. Harris that actually made the comment, but I appreciate all of your feedback. Now, I definitely want to jump on some of the things that Mr. Simamba had actually made, but I'll let you go first. I'm kind of interviewing you. I got you as my virtual guest today.
No, absolutely. First on Mr. Simamba, I thank him for his points of view. I thank him for, again, making the obvious point that in other jurisdictions where this question was put the first time, not only was this question in other jurisdictions met with a yes, the public supported it. Not only were there immediate public benefits that were derived from it, both at an individual level, but at a national level, whether it be a reduction in the court time, whether it be a reduction in the stigma and obviously opportunities at a personal level. But he also goes on to make the argument, or the point really, that answers, I think, the hysteria that, again, we're creating more work for ourselves, but the hysteria that says, well, a yes vote means that everybody going to be smoking, they can be lit up all over town, people will be walking into restaurants, people will be walking on the streets, and they'll be blazing. Even in places like Canada, where the entire country not only said yes to decriminalizing, but they've also legalized it for recreational and personal use across the entire country. Nobody is doing it in public. All of it, in large majority, is still done in the privacy of your own home. And I think that the personal freedom that gives those individuals, first of all, these were folks who were never doing it in public anyway, even when it was illegal for obvious reasons. But now they can do it in their backyard without worrying about ICE or the police or whatever knocking down their door saying, hi, come with me because your neighbors reported a smell emanating from your backyard. That's all it is.
Well, I want to offer some conservative view, because he talked about the religious piece, and I think he even mentioned basically he doesn't see a problem with persons doing just about any drug that they want. I just want to offer up something. As far as I'm concerned, if you made a very good point when you talked about alcohol, and he talked about, what are people going to be saying in the future, in the history of it. But let me offer up something because...
Can you believe?
Yeah, but let's offer up something because we could probably do that right now.
Yeah.
We could sit here and say, let's go back to when there was, zero alcohol. Just sitting around the proverbial campfire.
Yep.
Somebody goes, and I don't know, let's just make a quick hypothesis. Somebody had some rotten fruit somewhere and they just sat there for a couple of days or whatever, and somebody tasted some of it and started stumbling.
Eureka!
Yes. And then all of a sudden, I would imagine people sitting around the campfire in the village would say, what exactly has happened to Bob? What do you mean? Well, he's bobbing all over the place. What happened to him? And then they find out that he's been drinking something from some spoiled fruits. And there's a couple of other people that want to engage in the drinking of something from spoiled fruits. And then he's bobbing all over the place. And I would imagine that this would have been something that human society, naturally, I think the Bible encourages it. But even outside of the Bible, I think it's kind of written in our minds and our hearts to some extent that we say, I'm not sure that this is proper behavior. So why is that? Because didn't you notice that Bob he almost fell in the fire? Right? And whether we had the term drunk or not, he almost fell into the fire. And that's perhaps how it starts. And then you also get a conservative view where the person says, well, I'm just drinking in the company of the pleasure of my own home. I'm not even going out in the public. But as a rock hits in a lake and you get the ripple, those concentric circles continue to go outwards. So it is with everything else, where now it is a matter that everybody's drinking everywhere and they're in their cars and they're in their clubs. And then you have the incidents that you talked about, which is where it's people crashing their car and how many young persons, elderly persons have lost their lives as a result of alcohol and the danger of this drug. But then would we not go back now and say, well, isn't this what I'm trying to tell you? That you should not legalize this fruit? Because even again, the Bible would tell you, amongst other things, it says everything in moderation. So even if we sat and we saw someone just eating food, it's like he's on his third plate. Something tells us that this is a little bit too much. Why are you eating so much food? It can't be healthy for you. It's not in proper moderation. And so if we put that in the same marijuana context, and this is where we get on the slippery slope, right? Because now we'll say, well, we can justify the legalization. And again, I know you're not saying legalization.
No. But the government is not saying it.
Well, we're talking about the referendum question. That's not what the question is saying. But we will get to the point at some point where we say, well, should we just legalize this? And again, what do we use? We use what's happening with alcohol or what's happening with cigarettes, and this is a slippery slope. And then tomorrow, marijuana is there. And to our good friend's point, soon we'll add cocaine and soon we'll add something else. At some point in time, I think whether you look at it from a purely biblical perspective, and this is where you had some persons who take the position that, how would I say, we can't let our Bible or whatever it dictate the laws. This is really ultimately where it comes from. This is really where it comes from. Bible or what is already kind of written in your heart. We kind of know automatically that there's a danger in that alcohol because when you drink it, you do things that is out of your mind. Like, walking in front of a car doesn't make sense. Initially, you would not have, as a little 4-foot man, you would not have tried to hurt a man that's 7 feet tall. But when you drank, you tried doing it, and that's why you got hurt. And so we start acting and doing things out of our mind. And so I just want to put that in perspective that we need to have a discussion. And as quite frankly as I'm concerned, all of us have a moral sort of perspective engaged, kind of written inside of us, which again coincides with what the word says. I've written it in your hearts. Even if you don't have the word, it's already there. But I do not discard the Bible at all because I can tell you I view the Bible from a purely intellectual perspective, and I would challenge anyone to come and actually give me some good facts as to why it's wrong.
Agree with you.
If you don't want to believe in the little invisible man, that's fine with me. But tell me where in the Bible the context is wrong.
Correct.
Okay? Including everything in moderation, which means your food and your water and everything else. Exercise, everything is absolutely correct in everything that I've seen. So let's get on to this decriminalization, because a lot of persons are going to say that ultimately this is where it leads. And I think that there's a possibility that when we talk about decriminalization and to try to deal with some of the harmful effects that you're talking about as we have our campfire discussion, why can't it be that you are still going to have a criminal offense for smoking marijuana because we do not want you to do it, because we believe that there's harmful effects of doing it, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
But here's what we do for you. If in the event that you did end up going to prison or whatever it is that you ended up having as a result of this criminal offense, what will happen is it's not on your record, because it's not on your record simply because we don't want to prevent you from being able to go overseas, X, Y, and Z.
Get a job.
Could you not have that? Could you not have that hybrid?
Yes.
Right? As opposed to saying, yeah, well, in addition to that, you also don't really go and face a real sentence either. It's just a $500, a couple of dollars.
Right.
Because I think once you do that, I'll give you a good example. When I was building the first structure I was building, my apartments, I had a big heap that we had piled up with all the trash. And then I said, I got the price to get it moved, and I don't remember the price exactly, so don't really hold me to it. But let's just say someone was going to come and move it for me for $150. And then you call the government and you say, well, how much are you going to charge me if I burn this? What's the fine? Like, it's $50. I'm just throwing, I don't remember the number.
Right.
I'm like, guys.
It's cheaper to beg for forgiveness than permission.
Well, $50 is the fine?
Mm-hmm.
I don't go to prison for this? Well, I'm burning it.
Yeah, tell you that.
I just saved $100
Burn it right now.
So
you can come give me a ticket, but that's where it's going.
Right. So in the same way, is if you're saying to me that there's some young persons out there, especially at that age, experimental, and there'll be adults as well, and there's a lot of people that would say, because it has been decriminalized and weakened a little bit, in other words, I only got a fine to pay, you know what, I will try it. Whereas before, I would not have tried it because there's no way I'm going to risk having this in my blood, potentially losing my job, and potentially even going to prison. How do you respond to this, Mr. Harris?
Well, again, I respond to it by saying, let's not get ahead of ourselves. But it is good that we are having these discussions and thinking about these finer points, because there is a saying that the devil is in the details.
Right.
But again, from the vein of not getting ahead of ourselves and not making this process more difficult than it needs to be, all the referendum question is asking is for guidance, a steer. Do you think we should be decriminalizing small amounts of marijuana for personal possession and consumption? That's it.
Mm-hmm.
If it is a yes vote, then like the cruise birthing discussion, like the national lottery, government will go away. They'll create a white paper for, public consultation. There will be anywhere from a 28 to a 90-day period in which there's public consultations. If we do these discussions sensibly and comprehensively, they'll also include town hall meetings. We have a television station, so they'll be doing the rounds in the media. All of these finer details, which are all in many respects legitimate to the whole conversation and necessary, but that is when they begin. To your point, you can always stop something if you don't like the direction it's going in.
Yeah.
But it is much harder to start something that you've only thought about, discussed in hushed circles or at the water cooler, but have never made any progress one way or the other. And that is what the government is doing. The government is saying, for lack of a better word, I don't have the time
be nice.
to
I was trying to tell you to be nice.
in this way. Because again, I have very strong views on this. I've said before, you can't run a country by referendum. We go to the polls every 4 years to elect leaders, but we seem surprised or unwilling to let them lead. And we expect leaders to tackle the difficult decisions, the ones that are emotionally charged, but you see the bigger picture out of it. But you expect the politician to address these questions, not from a moral standpoint, but to remove the emotion and view it objectively, logically, and in the interest of the greater good. The problem is, as we stated before, many politicians, too many politicians, don't do this because they're thinking about the next election, not the next generation.
Well, just for clarity, in case to avoid wounding any one particular person, I feel obliged to say.
Feel obliged to protect them.
Obliged. No, not to protect.
That skin.
No, not to protect. I feel obliged to make sure that there's a full understanding and transparency. And my understanding is from the time you had the PACT government,
yes,
that there was 2 questions already slated for a referendum.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And that was the marijuana
yes.
and the gambling.
Yes.
I just want to make sure.
Yes.
And then is now when you had UPM
Yes.
That the cruise was added.
Yes.
That's my understanding, and
No,
I think that
right.
clarification is important.
No, you're absolutely right. But also to the point, at the same time that they said, okay, these need to go to referendum, the government could have taken the position to develop the white paper, to engage the discussion, and spent 4 years talking about this with the view at the end of 4 years having a direction we should go in.
I am not necessarily big on the referendums either. I think you should have the public discourse, and I think it's a case where you can go out, you can start to get the experts, you can have this, all of the work going on, have your community meetings, have it with the general public, and get their engagement. Again, campfires, even like the talk shows, get all of that feedback, help that inform your paperwork, and then sit down and say, hey, we've had all the facts. Let's make a decision. I think you're put there to lead.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
Got a question on WhatsApp. It says, it's all good and well if marijuana is legalized. No, decriminalized. But anyway, but what will be done to structure and or put in place restrictions for the use in public, such as events, open-air restaurants, and family events? Well, again, I think we just addressed that, but I'll do it again, just because it's necessary. We're not there yet. But if I were to answer that question directly, and if I were to use the examples that other jurisdictions have implemented when asked the same question, is that none of those things will be possible. There will be no smoking of marijuana in the streets, because again, it is still illegal. But you can use it for personal consumption, presumably within the confines of your own home or otherwise. You cannot sit in a park bench and, quote unquote, blaze up, so to speak. But I can't say that definitively because we are not at that point in the discussion. We're still wondering whether we should take this step or not.
And again, I want to reiterate the point that you made again. Let's understand that we have constitutional mechanisms to stop things, PIRs, etc. What we don't necessarily have is the get it going. It's pretty easy to turn the engine off in this particular case, but it's a lot of cranking. To get it going.
Absolutely.
And we need to bear that in mind when it comes to these referendum. But I do want to say that you can always have your representative, especially with your single member constituencies, the numbers are pretty small, to be able to make sure that you're putting the right things in his or her ear as to what you believe should or should not be done.
Yes.
So in this case, again, get the general concept. Do I agree with the direction of decriminalization or not? If you don't agree with that direction,
say no.
Say no.
Yes.
If you do, and maybe there's little caveats, maybe there's little things specific, then you would vote yes and say, let's continue the discussion. We'll fine tune it.
That's correct.
That's again, the discussion.
I think that's
decision that you need to make.
Fantastic summary of the choices that face voters, registered electors, in this referendum. Exactly put. This is what the question is asking. If you think it's a bad idea, you think it's not even worth discussing, no should be your answer. But if you agree that, you know what, there are some merits to this conversation, there is some fine-tuning that is necessary, and maybe, I want to know what small quantities are. Maybe I want to know where we can use it, where we shouldn't use it.
Right.
And I want to know what it means to decriminalize but still be illegal. All of these conversations, whether it be decriminalizing of cannabis or marijuana, whether it be a national lottery or whether it be a cruise, the good news is just give us a direction is what the government is asking for, and then we can engage in what the final picture will look like. And again, it will come back to the people and say, what do you think? Should we do it? Should we not do it? Because I want to keep my job. I really do. So, these are bigly important issues.
Absolutely. And again, I will add, because I think it's important, that, again, this is part of the reason why I can't see, if you're taking that same format, that same process of thinking that you just mentioned, it becomes very difficult for me to see why you would want to say a blatant no, for example, towards cruise. That doesn't make sense. It's like, I surely want to hear this discussion.
It baffles my mind as well, and not only ours. We have a WhatsApp text message this time along that vein. It says, good evening, Austin and Ellio. On this Good Friday, as we remember Christ who gave his life to lift others up, there is something very strange that our society stays quiet on marijuana and gambling, but with the power to destroy lives, yet loudly fights against cruise birthing, which stands to help feed families and build futures. Why do we give a pass to what tears down, but crucify what builds up? The Bible says in Isaiah, woe to those who call evil good and good evil. Let us not forget what today means. Sacrifice for the good of others. God bless you all and our precious islands. So, I mean, again, I think that's a fair point.
Yeah, and, you know, I remember making this statement years ago, Austin, when you and I were on the talk show. And it was basically saying, I know what metal looks like when it rusts. You know what plastic looks like when it's eroding and crystallizing. But what is a decay of human society? How do you gauge that? How do you know that a society is rusting?
Mm-hmm.
It's a fundamental question. And as far as I'm concerned, my answer to that question is this. And I gave this example on numerous occasions. A man is standing somewhere in the middle of the desert, and he knows that to his right hand there is water, and to his left hand there is none. And someone comes and asks, can you point me to water?
Yep.
If he points his left hand, then he's sentencing the person to death. If he gives them the right hand by telling the truth, he gives them life.
Mm-hmm.
And this is fundamental when I think that if we, as a society, when we find ourselves, whatever reason, whatever biases for money, for friendship, whatever it is, find ourselves doing what I know in your heart tells you you cannot possibly be doing, which again goes back to the Bible. For example, I am my brother's keeper. You see, because nowhere in the Bible did it say, go bow down and worship a tree. It says, I give you dominion over the trees. I want you to take care of the garden.
20 seconds.
But not serve it. And so when we find ourselves with people saying, I'm not going to be my brother's keeper, I think that this is a sign of the rusting of society.
Very well said. It is 58 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock. We do need to pause, take in the BBC News, but keep it locked. There'll be more Straight Talk here on Bobo FM.
Bobo.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
A vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world. Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
Welcome to our newsroom here in central London. We place ourselves here at a little desk right in the thick of things.
OS from the BBC.
We can catch the very latest news from our colleagues, not just in this enormous room, but also from our colleagues around the world.
I'm in the room where they're treating children.
This is a combat zone.
The situation after the typhoon is very complicated.
It was a very tense situation.
OS from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
BBC News.
BBC News.
World news from the BBC. Violent clashes.
Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive wind.
A search and recovery operation.
A race against time.
An imminent threat.
Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
Hello, this is the BBC News with Fiona MacDonald. Donald Trump has said his administration will abandon efforts to broker a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine unless there are rapid signs of progress. From Washington, here's John Sudworth.
President Trump's threat to walk away has come as a surprise. Talks between US, Ukrainian and European officials who met in Paris this week were said to be going well, but the first sign that something was wrong came from one of those in attendance, the American Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who'd warned that unless a deal was doable, Washington would move on. But whether the US threat to step back is real or is a negotiating tactic, fears that Russia is now gaining the upper hand both on the battlefield and in negotiations mean it's Ukraine that's feeling the pressure.
The former president of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Joseph Kabila, has returned to the country, arriving in the rebel-controlled eastern city of Goma. The current president, Felix Tshisekedi, has accused Mr. Kabila of plotting against him and sponsoring M23 rebels. David Bamford reports.
Congo's former president, Joseph Kabila, prized out of office in 2019, has been living in South Africa for the past 18 months. In early April, he said he was resolved to return home to help find a solution to the crisis in eastern Congo. On Friday, he arrived in the city of Goma, reportedly travelling via Rwanda, which the Congolese government accuses of backing the Eastern Rebellion. Mr. Kabila told the magazine Jeune Afrique he was consulting with opposition and civil society groups about Congo's political future, amid criticism of President Tshisekedi's response to M23's campaign.
Officials in the west of the Democratic Republic of Congo say the number of people now known to have died in a riverboat accident several days ago is 148. The wooden motorboat caught fire and capsized on the Congo River near Mbandaka. The vessel was carrying about 400 passengers. The fire was reportedly started by a passenger who had been cooking on board. Large crowds in Tunisia have demonstrated outside the trial of more than 40 senior politicians, diplomats and media personalities accused of conspiring against the state and its president, Kais Saied. Here's Mike Thompson.
Rights groups claim that this trial is more about a crackdown on dissent by an increasingly authoritarian president than a quest for justice. Those on trial include the prominent opposition leader Najib Shabi and dozens of other renowned politicians, media figures and former officials. They're accused of various conspiracy charges. All potentially face long jail terms or even the death penalty. Although capital punishment has effectively been suspended in Tunisia, the sentence remains available to judges.
BBC News. The Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is making an official visit to Syria for the first time in 16 years. Mr. Abbas met the new Syrian leader, Ahmed al-Shara, in the capital Damascus. Local media said the two would discuss the threats they both face from Israel and the situation for Palestinian refugees in Syria. Thousands of people have protested in the Yemeni capital Sana'a about a series of deadly US strikes on targets, including a fuel port that reportedly killed at least 80 people. The US said its attack on Ras Isa on the Red Sea was designed to disrupt oil supplies to Houthi forces. But speaking to the BBC, a human rights activist in Yemen, Radia al-Mutawakkil, said civilians were the ones who were suffering.
This attack is clearly affecting the economic situation of civilians in Yemen, not for Houthis. So if the US said it's just to make Houthis weaker, then it is just like a big lie. We know all this is like a civilian infrastructure and it can't hurt Houthis as much as it will hurt ordinary people.
Police in Ecuador say at least 11 people have been killed during an attack by gunmen at a cockfighting ring. Video of the attack in the coastal province of Manabí shows armed men entering the ring as spectators dive under seats for cover. Local media reports say the attackers, wearing fake military uniforms, were members of a gang called Los Lobos, whose rivals were at the cockfight. Russians hoping to spend their holidays on the Black Sea have been warned that some of the most popular beaches remain hazardous because of an oil spill late last year. Thousands of tons of oil spilled into the sea when two tankers sank during a storm in December in the Kerch Strait. More Russians have taken their holidays inside the country. BBC News.
Opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to your favorite talk show program, Straight Talk, with none other than Austin Harris and myself, Ellio Solomon. Just about 24 minutes left up in here in the studio. If you want to get into the conversation or carry us in some completely different direction, 745. This has been known to happen.
It has been.
745-2626, 745-2626. Or, of course, you can send us a voice message or a written text, 928-2562. That's 928-2562. I just, it's funny. We kind of started off on the religious stuff, again, on the Bible thing, and I really appreciate you leading us on that, Mr. Harris. And maybe I'm itching to make us end that way today.
Maybe.
But, again, I'm a firm Bible believer, for those who want to beat me over the head. I think that I was given a discussion about what is the rusting of society. And I think it is that truthfulness, and it's about being a brother's keeper. Have you noticed what the Bible said? Cain killed Abel.
Yes.
Very beginning. This is how it starts.
Yes.
Cain killed Abel, and God asked him a very question, good, important question. He says, your brother blood cries out to me. He says, where is your brother?
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have to infer that God knows where his brother is.
Yes.
But God asked
question.
God asked him a very important question.
Yeah.
And we are here to show you an ideology, a way of thinking that is wrong and that is evil. He says, where is your brother? And the evil response is, am I my brother's keeper?
Mm-hmm.
And from beginning of time, that's the ripple. When a person cares and becomes his brother keeper, he works to do good. So let me give you an example. Literal brother or figurative, you see him going and putting a bottle of rum to his head. If you're a good brother's keeper, you might say, why are you drinking, man?
Mm-hmm.
It's not good for you.
Yep.
Why are you smoking?
For the same reason.
Why are you walking on the roof like that? You could fall.
Mm-hmm.
This is caring for your brother. You want to call it religious, God, believing, whatever it is. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's written in your heart.
Yep.
And let's just say your brother does have the drink and now he's stumbling around. You might say, if you are your brother's keeper, let me put him in bed. I don't want this guy to walk out in the road. He's out of his mind. Mm-hmm. You are not your brother's keeper if you say, well, he big enough to drink. Just leave him. He can't hear, he feel. No, our actions take a certain step, a certain process, and carries us in a specific direction when we take on a godly philosophy, and that is one of, I am my brother's keeper. And it takes a completely different direction when you take on a devil's philosophy, which is, I am not my brother's keeper. And this is why I'm saying that to me it is written in our hearts. You can throw the Bible out if you want. You can't get rid of it. It's in the DNA, and we know it. And sometimes if you can't sleep at night, it's probably because you're trying to fight against something that's written inside you. And the bottom line is we are our brother's keeper. So when somebody says, should I legalize marijuana? Some fundamental questions to ask, but what happens when you smoke it? What happens to your health? And the list goes on. And once we get all of these things and all of our knowledge, and sometimes even to the person who is non-scientific, I don't know exactly what's happening when you drink alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
We can still judge from the results of it that it can't possibly be that good for you if you were seen a couple of minutes ago and now you're acting completely out of your mind. I do believe we had a text.
We did. And I think it's a very apt and timely text, given what you just said in terms of our brother's keeper and our responsibility. It says, good evening, gentlemen. West Side is listening. Me and some of the brethren want to know why the government refuses to acknowledge that they were heavy-handed on penalties for ganja smoking and as a result criminalized the generation of their own people while accepting foreign nationals to take their place in our society, many of whom have come to our shores with hard drug vices, in effect causing these same foreign nationals who came on work permits to replace our criminalized locals in the workplace, many of whom have now remained and are now Cayman status holders themselves. And I think that's an excellent point and an excellent observation, and one that I was trying to make in terms of the inequities of our current criminalizing of marijuana possession and consumption at the employment level. A Caymanian competing for a job against either an American or a Canadian who come from jurisdictions where it is not a criminal offense to possess and consume marijuana for recreational purposes, automatically that Caymanian is at a disadvantage or is on his back foot as it relates to employment. And when we consider that, well, let's call a spade a spade. The writer talks about many come to our shores with hard drug vices. The difference between a person who's got a marijuana conviction and the person who does not usually comes down to the difference between who got caught, really. Because there are more people in society today who are consuming these illegal substances, but just haven't been caught.
Yeah.
And as far as hard drug vices
You won't let them know when you get caught, Austin.
No, I won't let them know. I'm no snitch.
No, not you. I just.
But what I'm saying here is, and if we look at it reasonably, cocaine, heroin, even fentanyl, these are white-collar drugs. These are drugs that are used in industries like banking and law and accounting and whatnot. At least, certainly, that has been the evidentiary fact worldwide, whereas marijuana is more of a working man drug because it's a plant. It grows like that. It lets off a bud, and you grab this on paper, you light it, boom, there you go. But you didn't have to, whatever you get from the other drugs. But the point is that if we live in a society where we have laws, and in this case, the employment or labor law says that Caymanians should have the advantage over everyone else because the law states the only way you get a work permit is if A, they possess a skill that no Caymanian has, or B, that there are no Caymanians available to take this spot. Now, again, we see firsthand every single day how that basic fundamental intent of the employment or labor laws or even immigration laws in our country are ignored, overstepped every single day. And we see this borne out in the number of work permits that are issued every single year. So on the question of one drug, marijuana, cannabis, whatever you want to call it, shouldn't we be seeking to remove the hurdles that our Caymanians face in terms of gainful employment, going out there and basically providing for themselves instead of being, wards of the government through welfare or financial assistance or otherwise? Why should we rob someone the right of a own individual career simply for, frankly, an outdated law that the rest of the world has since binned and moved past? Why must we, whether it be morality or otherwise, why must we be stuck in the Stone Ages? As I grew up in a spiritual, godly home. But there are some questions in which we have to evolve past. And the only way to evolve past them and get caught up with the modern world is if we leave emotion at the door and look at pure logic. And that's the question. I think somebody else asked the question, gee, I wonder what our grandkids will think of us. There was a time that we actually had to get up to change the TV channels. Do you remember there was a time where they actually had rotary phones? There was a time a cell phone weighed as much as a brick. They'd be I
had one of those.
Exactly. So all of these things that to my son and your daughter's generation would consider archaic, what will they think 100 years from now when they look at some of these otherwise, and there's a word I'm looking for and I've lost it again, but laws that seek to restrict rather than to enhance. And in this case, the stigma that has always applied to a person who has a criminal record, whether it be for drugs or any other offense. Once you have a criminal record, employers aren't going to hire you. They just automatically form an opinion of you. They don't care whether you were 19, 20, 21, whether, you got a contact high or whether you actually did it yourself. They don't care about any of that. They just know that, boom, you can't work for me. But they will employ persons who perhaps either have not been caught or have come from jurisdictions where these laws aren't even on the books. But those persons are having a distinct advantage over Caymanians. And yet we're surprised to see why so many folks are, getting work permits and then after that getting permanent residence and getting Caymanian status. We are very increasingly becoming an endangered species in our own country. And we do so, arguably, by our own efforts.
Yeah, well, you definitely have my vote in that area. There's no doubt in this country that there's separate rules. And again, I keep telling people, although they're accusing me of being anti-foreigner, that's not the case. But we see it all the time. We see persons coming here and bringing guns and bullets, and nothing happens.
Quite right.
What was it? It was a Caymanian, remember years ago, that he pulled up a rusty gun and still went to face the mandatory sentence of 10 years.
Yes.
Meanwhile, there's somebody bringing in a working gun, bullets in the airport. Oh, well, please, Mr. Fred, if you don't mind, please don't bring this back the next time.
Yes.
Oh, wow. It's amazing.
Yes. Well, I got a WhatsApp text message, a definite yes for me on the marijuana question. Well, that's encouraging. And again, the purpose here is not to tell you which way to vote, but it is simply to explain, first of all, what the question is asking, also to explain what other jurisdictions have done in response to this question, what some of the advantages are, but also to highlight and legitimize that there are cons to this conversation, and we don't want to undermine those cons. We don't want to suggest they don't exist, but it is something that we think we should, as a country, seek to evolve, seek to move past, seek to, at very least, have a detailed discussion on these matters. And the government of the day is telling you, well, they can't even begin that discussion until you give them permission. So they're seeking it now through the referendum vote, and we encourage you to be a part of it. 745-2626 is the number, or you can reach out to us on our version of the toll-free number, 928-2562, and send us either a WhatsApp voice note or a WhatsApp traditional text message.
This would probably be a good time for me to remind the public that my colleague and I are going to not be here on Monday.
Yes.
We're going to be off, I don't know, somewhere along the line, somewhere in our mind.
Yes.
With twisted minds, we believe that we deserve a day off.
Can you imagine?
And it's a public holiday. We didn't get to, we're here on Good Friday. But if you don't mind, we ask your forgiveness. We're going to be skipping out on Monday. But of course, we want to make sure that you are here with us as one good family, looking after the next brother.
Yes.
Here on Tuesday.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct indeed. And I guess as a treat, I had a recommendation. You will recall, of course, we had Mr. Notch as our guest in studios.
Right.
When we're talking about the release of his new album, Reggae Man, which came out on all digital platforms on April 7th. He's encouraged us and certainly given us his permission to play one of the songs as our going out before we wrap it up tonight. That's also contained on that album, but may have some significance to the conversation we're having tonight.
I think we need to ask him if he's sharing the Facebook link, our Facebook link on his page.
Well, I would
so
hope
people
he
can
is.
hear his song.
I would hope he is.
Talk to him, man. Talk to him.
Yeah, man, I'll work with him. But that's a very good point.
Yeah,
Mr. Notch, you listen. I know you got the platforms. Just
yeah, give us a little
plug.
boost.
Share our Facebook page.
Share
link
the
to
love,
your
man.
friends. Share WhatsApp our YouTube link. Share it. But I know you got your ears on, and I know who your friends are. We know who our friends are.
There we go.
And certainly we will we'll play Mr. Notch's song.
Exit with the vibes.
His rendition of Easy Skanking. I think that's the song he wants me to play. That is contained on his new album, Reggae Man, which, as we stated before, is available on all digital platforms right now. There will be a world premiere release of the song that we are going to be sharing for you tonight as we sign off in about 6 minutes. The song's about 4 minutes long, maybe longer than that. Maybe in about 3 minutes. We're going to sign off and play the song and then say goodbye for the night. But once again, you're going to hear it first here on Straight Talk before anyone hears it anywhere else. So if you're not tuned into Straight Talk today on this Good Friday, then you're going to miss it. If you're not joining us on our live streams, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, whether it be our Facebook page or the ACT Cruise Tourism Facebook page, you won't have the opportunity to hear it and know, but certainly the world will have an opportunity to hear Mr. Notch's rendition of Easy Skanking as it makes its release worldwide tomorrow, on all digital platforms. And we thank him for, again, allowing us to debut it. And a great opportunity, as my partner says, to be our brother's keeper, to uplift our fellow Caymanians in all in their endeavors. And Mr. Notch is just another one of those.
And just to give you a little bit more information as well, we talked about taking Monday off.
Yes.
And I will be flying to the BRAC.
You will.
And be at the Ashton Rutty Center starting at 5:30 on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
All right, chatting about cruise tourism. And I want to encourage all of the Brackers, the good Brackers there, to come out, listen to the discussion, hear what it is that we have to say.
Yes.
So that's on Tuesday, April the 22nd at the Ashton Rutty Center on the Bluff Road in Cayman Brac. And of course, while I'm doing that, I'm going to try to see if I can call in and spread a little bit of the Brac vibes, you know, walk around to one or two people that might want to say a few things there on the program via the phone.
Absolutely.
We're going to try to do that. And of course, I believe on the Truthful Tuesday or Super Tuesday, you call it.
Yes.
We should have again Mr. Jordan Rivers.
Yes. If we look ahead to next week, thank you for that to our listening audience. So we won't be here on Monday, but on Tuesday, Super Tuesday returns at 5 o'clock. With Jordan Rivers. He'll be with us in studios from 5 till 6, maybe 6:30, depending on the context and the, obviously, feedback from the listening audience in that discussion. Then on Wednesday, again, my colleague will be in the BRAC, spreading the word on cruise tourism to our brothers and sisters on the sister islands. But he will be a part of the program, at least in the first half hour, where we engage. We hope to engage in a live remote call-in, if you will, maybe, as my colleague said, an opportunity to chat with some of the folks in the BRAC who listen to the program and get some feedback live and direct, as we say.
Yep.
And then at 5 o'clock, we move back into the discussion, put our cruise birthing hat on. We will have two fantastic guests in studios.
Indeed.
Persons with a long background in tourism and the cruise sector. We will have Mr. Tim Adam, and he will be joined by our good friend, Mr. David Miller, whom of which listeners may recognize as one of our callers. He has a rich understanding and a deep history of our Cayman Islands tourism product, and who better to match him than Mr. Tim Adams, who really
great combination
needs no introduction.
You really need more than 2 hours, but that's all we can afford right now.
That's correct. So with the remaining time that we have left, a quick opportunity for some closing comments, Ellio, so we can save time for this song.
Absolutely. I just want to say, happy Easter, happy Good Friday. Let's not forget the reason for the season, as they say. And again, I want to encourage everyone, let us stick together. Caymanians, my brother, those who are imported and those who were born here, as I say, peen or plain, let us love each other and let us be our brother's keeper. And have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you here on Wednesday, worst case. That's myself.
Absolutely. And I'll be back with you on Tuesday, but whether he's here in studios or whether he's away, Ellio will be here as well. God bless you, Cayman. Have a safe Easter weekend. We'll tune in again on Tuesday for Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM.
Easy. Free the minds and the soul. Slow. And the senseless and the build. Lay down my burdens. I'm gonna rest my weary. I'm gonna find my meditation. And there I'll have my praise. Easy skanking. Skanking it slow. Slow. Easy skanking. Letting you know. Excuse me while I light my spliff. Oh God, I've gotta take a lift. From reality, you just can't dream. That's why I'm staying with this way. So take it easy, easy, easy. But I wanna take it slow. Slow down. Take it easy, easy, easy. Come and let the good vibes flow. My time feel nice. I don't wanna go home. Stick to my culture no more with I roll. Oh God, I gotta take a lift. But from reality, you just can't dream. That's why I'm staying with the street. So take it easy, easy, easy. Light up, won't you take it easy? Take it easy, easy, easy. I just wanna let you know that when he's a skanking, so the skanking is slow. So not to dread him bubbling. Gonna tell you what I know. Oh yeah. 5, 9, 6, 9, they don't wanna go home. Now I left the culture no more when I roam. Want to see the joy on your face, let it show. And there will be pressure no more. Oh yeah, he's a skanking. The skanking is love. He's a skanking. Let me tell you what I know. He's a skanking. Skanking is love.
That's Mr. Notch and Easy Skanking, debuting worldwide tomorrow. That's Straight Talk for
The home of the BBC World Service, the most trusted news source in the world. This is Bobo 103.1. The following commercial messages are brought